There's something I must confess. I studied fiction writing in college. Then I went on and got my Master's of Fine Arts degree in fiction writing. Before all that, though, I wrote stories as far back as I could babble. Pen on paper, fingers on keys, voice into a microphone. I love story. I love the power of good story. How it can sneak into someone's brain and change their view on a topic, or how it can act as the catalyst to a long-awaited catharsis. It can bring their latent fears to a boiling point so as to help them overcome them, or show them that they aren't alone when faced with the death of a parent. This Flesh and Blood video is about a story, a class, and a keyword. That keyword is phantasm, and how phantasm was why I fell in love with Flesh and Blood. If you would like to support my work, you can follow the link to my Patreon in the description below. I cannot express how helpful it is. I am forever grateful to those who have already taken the chance to give me some of their hard-earned money so that I can make these videos. Besides that, there will also be a link in the description to my Substack, where a few of my short fiction pieces are available to read, should you have any interest in that. Illusionist is one of 14 possible classes available for play in Flesh and Blood. First added to the game with the 4th set to release Monarch, with Prism, Sculptor of Arclight. Prism, a fan favorite hero and one who haunts my videos, always lingering in the background, asking me to talk about her, was the first of her kind. Wraith is largely made up of the classic fantasy characters, the brave and reckless brute, the stalwart guardian, the noble warrior, the deft ranger, and so on. But upon release of Monarch, a hero wholly unlike anything I had ever seen hit the shelves. The Illusionist class is now famous, or infamous, for the Spectra keyword, but that is a topic for another video. Instead, I want to take you back to that time as we all learned of the Angels of Soul, who Prism called upon to defeat her foes in battle. I love angels, but not so much of the holy variety. No, I love the biblical angels, the righteous, frightening angels, like those seen in this clip. What we notice next about those angel cards, though, is this little keyword down here which states Phantasm. Phantasm states, if the card which has the Phantasm keyword is defended by a non-illusionist attack action card with 6 or more power, the card is immediately destroyed and the combat chain is closed, effectively ending the illusionist player's turn. But before we really dive into Phantasm itself, I must first talk about the illusionist. What exactly is an illusionist? The definition of an illusionist is relatively straightforward. It is one who works with illusions, or, more interestingly, one who deceives by magical or mystical means. Illusionists, then, conjure illusions, and they deceive magically or mystically. This is important for cards with Phantasm especially, because Prism's angels or Dromai's dragons are not real. While Prism and Dromai use these illusions to fight their battles for them, there's a wonderful little lineage which traces back to the artists and me, the storyteller. Storytellers, just like illusionists, have a similar outlook when it comes to telling a story. Our understanding of the mechanics of story allow us to conjure a state in which the audience willfully suspends their disbelief in order to be entertained by the story. This is the grand transaction between writer and reader, storyteller and audience. For example, you know that Cate Blanchett is not Galadriel, Lady of the Woods, and also Queen Elizabeth, but you are willing to suspend your disbelief, that being to shove your logical brain aside for the sake of entertainment. Or, take this clip of Charlie Chaplin nearly back-ending to a sure death in a library on roller skates. It's a trick of the camera. Our minds want so much to search for meaning in disparate elements, we will fill it in even when it isn't there. This term is called apophenia, in which we try to connect outcomes that are, in truth, independent. Our brains are so good at pattern recognition that it is actually too good at pattern recognition. Storytellers employ apophenia to great effect in their works. And so, when the storyteller does a bad job, that is when you are no longer able to believe them. The spell, as it were, is broken. And what's odd about this feeling, this loss of belief in the storyteller, is that it takes the form of closedness. A wall is created between us and the narrative. You may no longer affect me, we subconsciously say to the story. This, I posit, is captured perfectly in the Illusionist class. Normal attacks in Flesh and Blood, those without Phantasm, have a damage value in the bottom left. In the bottom right, nearly every card has a defensive value. If I attack with my 3 damage card and you block with your 2 defense card, I will deal 1 damage because all attacks have a spillover effect. Attacks with Phantasm, though, are something else entirely. They are often huge attacks. Most attacks in Flesh and Blood settle on the 3 to 5 range, whereas Phantasm attacks tend to run between the 7 and 9 range for the same cost. However, they come with the innate drawback of Phantasm. There's a lot to unpack here, but first I want to define and trace the etymology of the word itself. Phantasm, according to Webster's dictionary, as well as a few others, is something seen but having no physical reality. In philosophy, it is an impression received by the senses, especially as an image, often prior to any interpretation by the intellect. The second definition is the one that grabs me more. A phantasm is that which is perceived before the intellect takes hold. An example of this is seeing a ghost until you blink and shake your head and realize it's the shadow of your cat by the toaster. When we trace the word further back in the etymological tree, though, we see some more surprising results. Firstly, the word, unsurprisingly, comes from Latin and Greek. The words they used were phantasma in the singular and phantasmata in the plural form, rather than phantasms. So now I have a cool word to use at my armories. Anyway, they use this word for a few things. A phantom, or ghost, or apparition, as in, who are you going to call phantasm busters? But phantasm also means vision, or dream, phenomena, and most importantly, in my opinion, fantasy. We can track the word fantasy through early English and French as fantasie, and then back to Latin again in fantasia, which means imagination. The stroke of flavor genius from the chefs at Legend Story Studios, though, is their understanding of this word and how it applies mechanically. The defender must suspend their disbelief in order to take damage from illusionist attack cards. In other words, the opponent of the illusionist must believe that the attack is real, that the story they're being told is real, in order to experience the damage from the angel or the dragon or the chimera. They must believe the visage of Bellona, the war-tune herald, her fiery wings blazing, furiously and righteously cleaving with her mighty sword ablaze. Or Soraya, the archangel of knowledge, and a sort of Patronus for Prism, actually lives on the battlefield, but her Ward 4 function effectively means her apparition is easily broken. She can vanish in a blink from something so small as a razor-reflexed, harmonized Kodachi. This baked-in weakness to illusionist cards is but one trick, though. Illusionists have been busy crafting clever ways to get their opponents to believe their overrate damage is real. Take, for example, Passing Mirage, which is an aura an illusionist can conjure, which states the first illusionist attack each turn loses and can't gain Phantasm. I interpret this as a sort of sleight of hand. The illusionist creates a mirage, which distracts the opponent long enough that Prism can incant a story of the Herald of Judgment to bring holy retribution down upon her opponent. Passing Mirage also has that illusionist keyword, which will get its own video. But there's so much more to this. The implications in matchups are astounding in their depth and complexity. Take, for example, the way in which certain matchups play out with the Phantasm mechanic. The ire of any young-blooded illusionist is that of the Guardians and Brutes, whose decks are stacked with 6+ power attacks. In the case of the Brute, they simply don't care. They are brutes, after all. They are rampaging their way through fights, angrily ripping and tearing and biting and swinging. They don't have the time or patience to believe in silly stories about angels and dragons. Their rage fuels their fight, so nigh on 0 Phantasm attacks will make it through. In the case of Guardian, they are ancient warriors in the world of Wraith. They are imbued with the flow and have fought against the horrors of the world for so long their genetic lineage prepares them for practically any opponent or scenario. They see Kyloria or Bellona and think, cute. Whereas when they see an immensely powerful being surrounded by glimmering auras, all of which stunt their massive hammer swings, they get lost in the vacuum. But then take a ninja, or wizard, or even worse, ranger. Ninjas are nimble, and wish more to scamper and dodge and stab than look to the fiery eyes of an angry angel, or the snapping jaws of a ferocious dragon. Ninjas struggle to break Phantasm for this reason. Wizards spend so much of their time and energy channeling Aether, they don't have the energy to break the spell they themselves have been put under. Rangers, possibly the best current matchup for Illusionists, unless you count Lexi, have a quiver full of arrows and know each time they reach back to grab one and send it at an illusion is one less to take down the mighty storyteller. For me, this class will always be special, because when I play out my dragons and Dromai or conjure angels to fight for me, I can hear the stories I would try to tell in my mind. I would focus on the little details, the uneventable details, as I spake my magic into existence. I would describe an objective correlative to give the angel, because I know that the objective correlative is that which connects the audience emotionally to the main character. It is like Legend Story Studios reached into my history and created a class of character just for me. And all this subtext and story, from the little Greek-rooted word phantasm. And so, if you're new to the game or new to the Illusionist class, and maybe you're struggling to understand what exactly your hero is trying to do, just remember this. You are telling your opponent a story, and so you better come ready to entertain.